Record start. This is Tina, broadcasting on frequency 86.4. I don't know why I still turn this machine on. Maybe it's a habit. Maybe it's the only prayer I know. I am sitting in apartment 42 on the 16th floor of the 5th microdistrict. The city of Pripyat lies beneath me like a graveyard of concrete bones. It is 2 in the morning. Listen, can you hear it? Outside, the sky has opened up. This isn't normal rain. It doesn't smell like fresh water or wet earth. It smells like ozone. It smells like chewed aluminum foil and old batteries. When it hits the concrete balcony, it doesn't splash, it hisses. Hiss, 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 like acid eating through metal. I am cold. It is a deep, invasive cold that ignores my jacket. It settles in the marrow of my bones. I have a small fire burning in a metal bucket, fed by the legs of a broken chair I found in the kitchen. The flames are blue. They shouldn't be blue. That's the copper salts in the wood. Or maybe it's the air itself burning. My Geiger counter is sitting on a crate next to me. The yellow plastic is cracked. It is perfectly silent. And that is what terrifies me more than the clicking. In the zone, silence is a lie. When the radiation drops to 0, it means the laws of physics are taking a break. It means something else has walked into the room. I keep looking at the corner where the shadows are thickest. I feel eyes on me, not animal eyes, something older, something that doesn't blink. I need to document this happening, not for history. History doesn't care about us anymore, but for myself. I need to prove that my brain is still functioning, that I am not just hallucinating in the dark. Yesterday, I went down to the 2nd floor. There used to be a nursery there. It was a tomb of gray dust and shattered glass. The floor was covered in debris, broken dolls, plastic cars, tiny shoes that will never walk again. I was looking for something harmless, something that didn't smell like radiation or war. I found them under a cot. 3 wooden alphabet blocks. You know the kind. Simple, heavy oak cubes with faded Cyrillic letters painted on the sides. Blue, red, and yellow paint chipping away like old skin. I brought them up here. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to touch something made of wood, not metal. I placed them on the table near the window. The table is uneven. One leg is shorter than the others, so I used a piece of cardboard to steady it. 10 minutes ago, I turned my back to the room to check the rainwater collectors on the balcony. I was gone for maybe 20 seconds. When I turned back, the air in the room felt different, thicker, warmer. I looked at the table. The blocks had moved. They were not scattered by the wind. They were stacked, perfectly vertical, a tower of 3 rotten wooden cubes standing in the center of the shaky table. I stopped breathing. The floor in this building vibrates constantly from the wind hitting the concrete panels. It is physically impossible to balance them like that. Gravity should have toppled them immediately. But they stood there, mocking me. I walked closer, slowly. My boots crunched on the broken glass, but the tower didn't fall. I sat down and stared at them. The air around the table radiated heat, like standing next to an open oven door. And then I saw it happen. The top block rotated. It didn't slide. It pivoted on its axis, just a fraction of an inch to the left. A tiny, dry sound, like a fingernail scratching against a blackboard. There is no draft in here strong enough to do that.
The movement was deliberate. It was precise. It was intelligent. Something invisible was sitting at my table, right across from me, playing with my childhood toys. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to run, but my body was paralyzed. I was a statue. I just watched as the block turned again, slowly, aligning the letter M to face me. M. Mama? Mort? Murder? The block stopped. The silence rushed back in, louder than before.
It is 3 a.m. now. The rain has stopped. It didn't taper off. It stopped abruptly, as if someone in the sky simply turned off a tap. The silence that followed is worse than the storm. It is a heavy, pressurized silence. It presses against my eardrums like deep water. I can hear the blood rushing in my own veins. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I retreated to the corner of the room, huddling against a cast iron radiator that hasn't known heat since the Soviet Union collapsed. I wrapped my arms around my knees, trying to stop the shivering. The wooden blocks are still on the table, watching me, but I refuse to look at them. Then I heard it. A knock. It was soft, but in this dead silence, it sounded like a gunshot. Knock, knock, knock. 3 distinct, polite raps, like a neighbor asking to borrow some sugar. But here is the reality, and it is a cold, hard fact. The knock didn't come from the door. It came from the wall to my left, the load-bearing concrete wall. I know the blueprints of this building. I know them because I have to know where it is safe to walk. The apartment that used to be on the other side of that wall, it doesn't exist anymore. That entire section of the building collapsed during a heavy storm in 1996. There is no floor there. There's no ceiling. There's nothing behind that wall but empty radioactive air and a 100-foot drop straight down into the darkness. But someone knocked. My brain screamed at me to stay still, but my body moved on its own. I crawled across the floor, dragging myself over the dirty linoleum. I needed to know. I reached the wall. It was freezing cold, radiating the chill of the void outside. I pressed my ear against the rough, unfinished concrete. I held my breath. I expected to hear the wind whistling through the exposed rebar. Instead, I heard breathing. It was slow, wet breathing, like someone with fluid in their lungs. Inhale, rattle, exhale. It was right there, just inches away from my ear, separated only by a slab of concrete. Something is floating in the empty air, hovering 16 stories above the ground. It is pressing its face against the outside of my wall, listening to me, waiting for me to acknowledge it. I'm biting my hand to keep from screaming. I'm afraid that if I breathe too loud, it will hear me, and if it hears me, it might realize that the wall isn't as thick as it looks. It might decide to come in.
Record resumes. The night has finally bled away, but the sun refuses to rise. Here in the zone, we don't have a sunrise. We have what the old stalkers call the gray shift. I watched the sky turn from black to the color of a fresh bruise, purple, gray, and a sickly, jaundiced yellow. It looks like the sky itself is infected. I couldn't stay in the corner anymore. The breathing behind the wall had stopped, but the silence was suffocating. I needed air. I unlocked the rusty latch and stepped out onto the balcony. The air out here is thick enough to chew. It tastes of wet limestone and ancient, decaying pine needles. The concrete under my boots is slippery with moss that glows faintly in the twilight. Below me, the city of Pripyat is drowning. A dense white fog, we call it the cotton, has filled the streets. It swallows everything up to the third floor. It swallows sound, too. If you were to scream down there, the sound would die before it left your throat. The city looks like an island floating in a sea of milk. I lifted my binoculars to scan the horizon. I wanted to see the checkpoint. I wanted to see the road home. Instead, I looked toward the red forest, and my blood ran cold. I lowered the binoculars. I wiped the lenses with my sleeve. I looked again. I know this landscape. I have memorized every rusted pylon, every collapsed roof, and every dead tree for 3 years. The red forest has moved. Yesterday, the tree line was behind the old vehicle graveyard, maybe 5 kilometers away. Today, it has swallowed the road. It is barely 2 kilometers from my building. It has marched 3,000 meters in a single night. Through the high magnification lenses, the trees look wrong. They are not just dead pines turned red by radiation. Up close, they look like twisted muscles. Their bark is the color of dried meat. They are leaning toward the city, their branches reaching out like starving fingers. I watched them for 10 minutes, trying to catch them moving. They don't move when you look at them. They are frozen statues. But the moment you blink, they shift, a meter closer, then another. It's not the wind, it's a march. The forest is waking up. The roots are moving through the soil like worms, churning the earth, seeking the warmth of the sarcophagus and the warmth of us. I am witnessing a slow-motion invasion, and there is nowhere left to run. I tried to look away from the marching forest. My mind couldn't process the scale of it. I needed to look at something smaller, something human. I looked down into the courtyard directly below my building. The wind had shifted, and for a brief moment, the dense white fog thinned out, revealing the ground 16 stories below. There is a playground down there. It is a sad collection of rusted metal skeletons, a slide that leads into a patch of radioactive moss, a carousel that hasn't turned in 30 years, fused solid by rust, and a swing set. There was someone there. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by a passing cloud. I wiped the lenses of my binoculars with my trembling thumb and adjusted the focus. The image sharpened, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a child, a boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old. He was wearing a bright blue winter coat and a knit wool hat with a bauble on top. The colors were shockingly vibrant against the gray concrete. He was sitting on the swing. But here is the horror. There was no swing. The chains were cut by looters back in the 90s. The wooden seats were burned for fuel long ago. The boy was sitting in mid-air. His hands were gripping invisible chains. His legs were pumping. He was swinging back and forth, suspended by absolutely nothing. Forward, back, forward, back. He made no sound. The swing didn't squeak. The wind didn't touch his clothes. This wasn't a ghost. I have seen ghosts in the zone. They are misty, transparent, sorrowful things. This was different. He looked static. He looked like a bad video recording projected onto the air. The edges of his blue coat were pixelated, twitching like a corrupted digital file. I watched him, paralyzed, unable to look away. And then the loop reset. Every fourth swing, at the highest point of the arc, his image flickered violently. Zzz. For a split second, less than a heartbeat, the blue coat vanished. Instead of a boy, I saw a charred black shape, a human shadow burned into the background by intense heat, a statue of ash. Then, snap! He was a boy again, swinging, smiling, innocent. The zone isn't just haunted, it is broken. It is a scratched record skipping and replaying the exact moment of pain over and over again. And looking at him, I felt a new kind of terror. I am afraid that if I go down there, I will get stuck in the glitch with him, swinging forever in the cold, trapped between the boy and the shadow.
I couldn't watch the boy anymore. I felt physically sick, a wave of nausea rising from my stomach. I stumbled back inside the apartment, slamming the balcony door shut. The latch is broken, so I shoved a heavy crate against it, as if a plastic crate could stop a glitch in reality. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I needed a distraction. I needed a connection to the world that still made sense. I sat down at my makeshift desk, a plank of wood on 2 cinder blocks, and pulled my shortwave radio closer. It's an old Soviet VEF, battered and scarred, but usually reliable. I extended the antenna and turned the volume knob. Static. Just the hiss of white noise, the sound of cosmic dust hitting the atmosphere. I spun the tuning dial slowly, milliliter by milliliter, searching for music, for news, for just a human voice from Kyiv or Minsk, anything to remind me that time is still moving forward out there. And then the needle caught a frequency. It wasn't a broadcast station. The signal was strong, clear, and terrifyingly close. It was a voice, a woman's voice. It was my voice. My hand froze on the dial. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. My lips were not moving. I wasn't speaking, but the radio was broadcasting me. At first, I thought it was a trick, an echo of something I said yesterday. The zone holds echoes like a canyon. But then I listened to the words. The voice on the radio was screaming, but in a forced, desperate whisper. It was describing things that haven't happened yet. The radio voice said, "They are in the hallway. The barricade is failing. I can hear the lock snapping. Oh God, the wood is splintering. Don't open it. Don't look at its face. It has my eyes." I stared at the speaker mesh. The voice was me, but a version of me that was about 5 minutes into the future. A version of me that was about to die. I panicked. I didn't turn it off. I ripped the back cover open and tore the heavy D-cell batteries out. They clattered onto the floor, rolling into the shadows. The radio died instantly. I am sitting here in the silence now. My pistol is in my hand. It is loaded. I am aiming at the front door. The zone is not just watching me. It is editing me. It is playing my future back to me before it happens. Was that a warning, or was it a script? How do you shoot a future that has already been broadcast? How do you change an ending that is already written?
I am still staring at the dead radio. The batteries are on the floor, but the silence they left behind is not empty. It is waiting. And then the change happened. It didn't start with a sound. It started with the temperature. In the span of 3 seconds, The room went from cold to something else, something impossible. It wasn't a winter chill. It was the vacuum of space sucking the heat out of the world. My breath is coming out in thick, heavy clouds of white steam, but they don't dissipate. The air is so still that my breath hangs in front of my face like suspended cotton wool. I heard a sharp crack from the table. I looked at my plastic water bottle. The water inside didn't just freeze, it flash froze. The ice expanded so fast it shattered the plastic casing. Snap! Shards of plastic flew across the table. The condensation on the walls has turned into elaborate patterns of frost. I can hear the wallpaper glue snapping as it freezes. Click, crack, snap. The room is contracting. I tried to pick up my Geiger counter. My fingers feel numb, like they belong to a mannequin. I looked at the screen. It doesn't say 0. The screen is blank. The liquid crystal display has frozen solid. The battery is fresh, but the device is dead. Physics is leaving this room. The laws of thermodynamics are retreating, making way for a different set of rules. I feel a pressure in my head, deep behind my eyes. It feels like I am diving into deep water without a suit. My ears popped. I wiped my nose with the back of my glove. It came away red. I am bleeding. The pressure is rupturing the capillaries in my nose. I can taste the copper in the back of my throat. Something has arrived. It is not outside anymore. It is not behind the wall. It is here. It is standing in the center of the room, right where the wooden blocks were. I can't see a body, but I can see the light from the window bending around it. The dust motes in the air are swirling around a silhouette, outlining a shape that is human, but too tall, much too tall. It is a lens of distortion, and it is looking at me.
I couldn't stay in the living room with that thing. I scrambled backward, knocking over the chair, and retreated into the small bedroom. I slammed the door and dragged the heavy oak dresser across the floor to block it. It scraped loudly against the linoleum, a desperate, ugly sound. I sat on the bed, pistol aimed at the door. I know it's futile. Wood and furniture cannot stop a change in physics, but I had to try. I fixed my eyes on the gap at the bottom of the door. The light from the living room should be spilling through, casting a yellow rectangle on the floor. But the light is gone. Instead, something else is coming through. At first, I thought it was smoke, but smoke swirls. This pours. It is a black, viscous liquid. It looks like crude oil, or perhaps liquid mercury that has lost its shine. It oozes under the door, ignoring the friction of the carpet. It moves with a terrifying purpose. It isn't just spreading, it is hunting. It pools on the floor, expanding into a perfect circle. It absorbs the light. My flashlight beam hits it and simply disappears, eaten by the darkness. The smell has changed again. The sharp, electric scent of ozone is gone. Now the room smells of deep, wet earth. It smells like a grave that has been freshly opened after 100 years. It smells of roots and decay. I retreated to the furthest wall, climbing onto the mattress. The black pool is rising. It's not just covering the floor. It is climbing the walls. It defies gravity, creeping up the wallpaper like a living mold, sealing off the room. And then the sound started. It's not coming from the room. It's coming from inside my head. It starts as a low buzz, like an insect trapped in my ear canal. Then it resolves into voices. Not one, but dozens. They are whispering. Tina, Tina, open. I know these voices. That one, that's my father. He died in Kyiv 10 years ago. And that one, that's the stalker who shot himself in the Red Forest last winter. They are all here. They are trapped in the black oil. Join us. It's warm. I am pressing my hands over my ears, but the voices are bypassing my eardrums. They are vibrating directly into the bone of my skull. The zone is trying to overwrite my mind.
This is the end. I have nowhere left to go. Behind me is the window, 16 floors down to the concrete, a 2-second fall. In front of me is the room, now completely swallowed by the black liquid. It has stopped rising. It has become a still, dark ocean. And now it is taking shape. In the center of the room, the black sludge begins to rise. It defies gravity. It flows upward, thickening, coagulating. It looks like a reverse waterfall of oil. It twists and knots itself, building a structure. First, the legs, then a torso, then arms. It stands there, a faceless mannequin made of shadow and wet earth. Then the surface ripples. The black color begins to fade, replaced with colors. Blue, gray, dirty blonde. It is mimicking me. It is stealing my texture. I watch in paralyzed horror as the thing puts on my face like a mask. It forms a nose, a mouth, a scar on the chin, the same scar I got when I was 12. It opens its eyes, but they are not my eyes. My eyes are brown. These eyes are white, pure, milky white, like the fog outside, like the eyes of a dead fish. My double stands there, staring at me. She doesn't breathe. She doesn't shiver from the cold. She is perfect, and she is dead. She takes a step toward the bed. The floor doesn't creak under her weight. She raises a hand. It is gray, covered in grave dust. She reaches out to me. I want to shoot her. I have the gun in my hand, but I can't lift my arm. My muscles have turned to water. Or maybe I am already part of her. She speaks. Her voice doesn't come from her throat. It comes from the walls. It comes from the radio batteries on the floor. It is dry, like rust flaking off metal. She says, "You are tired, Tina. You have been fighting the current for so long. Why are you afraid? We are just waking up." And suddenly I understand. The radio broadcast wasn't a warning. It was a memory. I am not the survivor hiding in the room. I never was. I am the ghost. I have been the ghost all along, haunting this apartment, replaying my last night over and over again. The zone didn't trap me. It preserved me. The recorder is slowing down. The tape is running out. I can see the spools stopping. If you find this, don't come looking for me. There is no one here to find. I am part of the static now. I am going into the wall.
goodbye.